Hi, I'm Carrie Ann from Lofty. Today I'm talking to Alyssa Doorhy of CoChic Styling here in Chicago. We're going to be talking about transitions in entrepreneurship, what it's like to be a working mother and a business owner, and motivation. I'm excited you're here. Thank you for agreeing to do this today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And letting us do it in your beautiful home workspace, right?
Yeah.
Which works well as the stylist. So for anyone that is joining us today, the thing that I love about meeting you, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, is that I actually met you when you were sort of on small business venture number 1, and now you're in small business venture number 2.
Yes.
And so you really were, for me, a resource that I was using when I was in the corporate world to help bring and infuse a little more of my personality into my own style. And so it was just a really natural thing for me. When I started my own business, you were actually one of the very first people that I reached out to. And sort of when I was sitting there thinking, who do I know? Who's someone who could maybe help me out and tell me where to go, what to do, all these people I want to meet. And so we had coffee and we reconnected, and it was amazing because you'd, I think, had your stylist business for at least over a year. You might have been on year 2. I'm trying to remember. It was
I think about a year.
Yeah. So you had already had a successful, sort of startup under your belt. You were on number 2, applying what you learned. And so that's how we met, which I'm so excited that then you've been able to be my stylist. So, today making sure that I'm looking okay. So thank you, Alyssa, for joining. So what I want to do is just sort of jump in, and I think your story and kind of your background is going to organically come out of our conversation. But as you know, what our goal is to really help provide resources to other people who are thinking about starting their own business and are curious about how have other, especially women, done this successfully. And so that is one of the requirements for my guests is I look for people in my own network who I see as very successful and can teach all of us new tricks of the trade. So one of the things that we talked about ahead of time that I just want to start with is the piece of advice, maybe a piece of advice that you've received along the way that maybe has sort of stuck with you as you've been on this journey of entrepreneurship. What was it?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
So I actually recently heard this piece of advice from a friend, and it's kind of been, going through my mind for the past few years since I've had my business, but I really liked how she put it. And she said that comparison is the thief of joy.
Okay.
So I love that. It's so succinct, and it's so, really makes you think when you're, scrolling through Instagram and seeing other entrepreneurs. And, of course, it's good to be motivated by other people who are doing well, and, you want to be in those people's circles. But sometimes, it's hard, and you compare yourself to others, and you're like, oh my gosh, she's here, and I want to be doing that. And I just have to think to myself that I'm really happy with where I am. I feel successful, and I just need to, accept where I am in my business and, move forward, but not try to be comparing myself all the time to other, not only just other stylists, but also other business owners as well.
That's such a great piece of advice. And I think I can relate to that on so many levels. I think I've had a similar, so comparison is the thief of joy, is how it goes. Okay. I think I've heard a very similar kind of piece of advice in my career, which was something about never try to compare your insides to someone else's outsides.
Yes.
Just sort of a similar perspective, right? And it came to me from a mentor who I consider a wise sage, had been doing it longer than me. And I think that's great, because I think especially in the world that we're in today as a small business owner, it's easy to get into comparison mode, right? It starts as maybe some simple research. I know I tell people to do that all the time, right? Who are your top competitors? And knowing things like that are really key pieces of the puzzle. But the reality of sort of what happens in the social media environment is I think it can be a really quick switch that flips within you, where it goes from gathering information and sort of being inspired by others to this instant, well, gosh, I'm not there. My content doesn't look like that. wow, and you start to go down sort of an assumption trap. And before you know it, it can kill all the joy you have for your idea.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's a good thing if you're different from other people that you're looking at. You don't want to be the mirror image of a competitor or, you know, any other business, because you want to be unique and you want to have differentiators. So I think that's important to keep in mind too.
Yeah. So I'm curious now to just put you on the spot a little bit. Have you found that happen to you over the years? Like maybe that example I just gave of social media, or maybe even out networking where something sort of naturally has come up and you've sort of had that comparison is happening. It's the thief of my joy. What do you do?
Yeah, so for me, it's mostly just on social media. And I know that it's so ridiculous because we know that everybody's social media feed is not the real life, right? I mean, that's just a fact.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes it'll happen to me if I'm having a slow month, or I don't know, maybe I've spent more time with my daughter that week instead of, you know, working more. And so it kind of just, you know, gets the wheels turning. And sometimes it is a really good source of inspiration. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, this quote is really motivating me to go do this. But then sometimes I'm like, oh wow, that woman started after me and she's doing all this stuff. But then I kind of sit back and I think, well, do I really want to be doing that? Like, you know, I like
Right.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to put it into perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point. But I love that. I love that quote, and just even the way it's phrased,
Yeah,
I think
isn't
is
it
great. It is. I know. So comparison is the thief of joy. That's our takeaway there. That's really good advice. And, you know, just kind of thinking about that and thinking about your story and sort of how that may or may not have come up for you over the years, I would love it if you would talk a little bit about how you first found clients. So I mentioned that you had owned a business and then now you're on your second business. So I'm sure that is part of the story. But yeah, just, you know, as I think about, especially for myself, that's something that, you know, was a struggle for me as I first got started. You sort of have a network, but you know that network isn't enough. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So my first business was a women's clothing boutique. And I had a lot of loyal customers coming in like Carrie Ann. And so part of the way I got started was just word of mouth and telling my current customers what I was going to be doing, that I was going to be starting a wardrobe styling business. And, you know, I had a lot of people coming into the store asking for my advice on styling. So it was kind of just a natural progression for me. And I ended up closing the boutique, and I sent out an email blast just explaining, you know, one chapter's closed, but the next chapter is starting, and, you know, I would love any connections that you have, or if you want my help, I would love to help you. So it was kind of just starting with the customers that I had at the boutique, and then I really started getting involved in like women in business networking groups and that kind of stuff to really expand my network.
That's great. And one thing I love about that is that you weren't afraid to ask for help, right? Because I think that sometimes we have a tendency to think, well, I have all the tools, or I should be able to find all the tools, and I'm just going to sort of do this on my own. But I think the secret to growing a business quickly is really working your network and using your network, not being afraid to ask those champions of you in your network, especially people who understand, you know, what you're really great at and are inspired by you and excited, and to ask them, you know, who do they know? And I mean, I know, you know, the example comes up a lot for me with my friends that are real estate agents. They are not afraid to do that. And I take that away every time I talk with one of them, is, you know, it's never comes across as too salesy. It's so, especially when it just comes from an authentic place. Mm-hmm. So I love that you did that, and I'm assuming that it did start to show some results right away, or did you kind of go through immediate growth and then a slowdown and then sort of a secondary phase of growth, or what did that look like?
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened, actually. So a few of the people that I reached out to did end up hiring me. So, you know, I had that initial set of clients, and then there was a little bit of a slower period, and then I was like, okay, I got to get myself out there, which is scary. I'm not like the most bubbly person, so I know it's intimidating, but you just got to do it. Everybody at these networking events, everybody's there for the same reason. So, no one's going to be mean. You just introduce yourself and, make friends and have a good time. So that's what I told myself, and I got out there, and then I kind of had that second, set of clients. And then over time, people have hired me for multiple seasons to help them. And then, I get referrals and do other networking events and just try to be involved in different groups within the city.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect to talk about all the different ways you do it. The other thing that's interesting as you're talking, I was thinking, a lot of what you do, so it is styling people, and you have sort of different services that you offer from, for me, for example, just helping me in my everyday wardrobe, a closet clean out. I know you work a bit in the bridal side of the business too, or special events. And so those are natural places we think of styling. But one thing that's interesting that I was just thinking is, as you talked about that, it also reminds me a lot of when I hear people in any type of professional services, so any type of consulting business, and really, again, where that network is so important, and even when you are a little nervous about it, just going out there and doing it, right? And the one thing that you just said that really resonated with me is that everybody else is there to do the same thing,
right?
And so keeping that in mind, as I just imagine myself going to a networking event, hearing your voice in my head, I think, it feels a little better, right?
Yeah. Everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah. So one other thing I'm curious about, as we talk about sort of that part of your story and the pivot to your styling business, was I'm just curious what it was like to kind of go through the decision-making process to say, I've had this boutique, I've been doing this styling, things are going well. As I look at my sort of growth and what I want to be doing personally for balance in life, or, just fulfillment and what I'm doing professionally, what was that pivot like for you to make that choice to sort of close the boutique and go into the styling side?
Sure. I really did enjoy having the boutique. And one of the things that I loved most about it was meeting people and connecting with the customers and having that one-on-one time and helping them with their specific style and helping them to feel more confident, in their own skin, and helping them kind of develop their personal style. So the retail business is tough, and it was tough having the brick and mortar. So eventually I had the boutique with my mom and my sister, and we decided that as much as we loved it, it just wasn't really making economical sense anymore to keep the store. So because of the fact that I really loved styling clients, and I still wanted to be my own boss, so that's how I decided to start the business. And I did some research on other personal styling businesses in the city and in the US, and I kind of found my niche, and I felt like there weren't many options for more approachable personal styling for, normal people, and not celebrities, not, the rich and famous. So I really love just working with everyday women, men and women, but mostly women.
Yeah, which I think it's great when you know your target audience, who, is sort of that primary audience, and we all have secondary audiences too, as you mentioned there. But I think the fact that as you're telling that part of your story, that you organically felt, there's this need for a pivot, and I'm sure at the time there were mixed emotions about it. But the fact that you were able to sort of evaluate where am I finding success? What do I enjoy doing most? Mm-hmm. What are the things that if I let those parts of the business go, and evolved it in this different direction and took this chance and made this pivot, that I could, maybe find sort of the cash flow I need, the more rewarding work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a reality of owning your own business. I know I'm finding it in year 2 that already I feel like I've made about 3 or 4 mini pivots in terms of who the target audience is that I'm working with. And some of that happens organically, right? You can't know everything when you go into it. You go into a business with your goal and your vision, and you try it, right?
Right.
So I mean, I think that's really amazing. And the fact that, there is success still in that story, because I'm sure you learned an awful lot. And I know, I know from being one of your clients that the thing for me that is just consistent about that was the experience with you, right? The styling that I received when I was in your store is the same styling that I get now. And I'm sure that, clients that have been like me on the journey feel the same way. And that's a good transition, because my next question is about what is your superpower? And, I love the word superpower because, it just gets to clearly what makes us unique. So for you, I would just I'd be curious to know, I have an opinion of what your superpower is, but I want to know what you think it is.
Sure. So I love this question, and I thought a lot about this. And I've thought a lot about what differentiates me from other stylists. And I think that my superpower is that I'm a really good listener. So I really listen to my clients and, what they think they need, and also kind of help them anticipate what they might need. And I just really want to make people feel comfortable. I'm not all about the trends and, the flashy fashion. I love fashion, but I think that there's a place for it, and styling is more, what are people going to wear every day, and what are they specifically going to be most comfortable in?
Yeah, I love that. And do you want to know what my answer is?
Yeah.
I think that part of your superpower, it's so interesting that you said listening, because I think it's very related. I was going to say that you have this ability to help people feel very comfortable with you. Right from the beginning, from the first time, I walked in and you had, I remember at the time, kind of a range of options. A lot of the clothing was comfortable, right, to wear and sort of chic at the same time, which is why I really enjoyed your store and was drawn to it. But I remember that just also interacting with you from the first time that I tried something on and I said, well, I'm not sure, and you had an opinion, you had advice to give me, but it just came in this way that made me feel so comfortable. And I think that's so important when you're talking about styling.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And, I think when we think about your brand name of CoChic styling, there's definitely a part of that in sort of the essence.
Exactly. It's comfortably chic.
Yeah, right? So I guess I know that from a brand perspective. Okay. What I would love to know now is just talking a little bit about what your biggest motivator is for owning and running a business. And I'm curious if it's changed over the years. And one of the reasons I'm asking is because I know in our background noise, I feel like, so you're a working mother, right?
Yes.
And I love that. I love that part of the story. And I always like to, so part of what we do with this series is going to the workspace that everyone is working in most of the time. And so we're very fortunate to be in your home, so beautifully designed and such a good part of your style. But the other part of it is that, the reality that you have a little one here. And I was hearing her a little bit. She's taking a nap, and I love that. But that's great because we want the ambient sounds. But as I heard her, I was thinking, and I don't know if it picked it up, so maybe it just sounds like I was hearing things in my head. But I'm curious if your motivation has changed, especially just knowing that you've grown a family over the last year and a half.
Yeah, when I first became an entrepreneur with my mom and my sister, it was just a really good opportunity for me at the time. I had worked at an ad agency before, right out of college, and I had always been into fashion, and my mom had always talked about opening a store. So she asked my sister and I to get on board, and we just went for it. But I was in my early 20s. Taking that risk now might have been, I might have been a little bit more cautious, I think. But the fact that I was able to start this second business before having kids, I think I kind of thought once again, well, what do I have to lose, Yeah. I just got to go for it. And you just got to kind of believe that you're going to succeed. So now it's less of a good opportunity, and it's more the fact that I have a flexible schedule. I work where and when I want, unless I'm going to a client, of course. I work around their schedule. But it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to work at home while my daughter's napping.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious what maybe some of the biggest ways that work has changed for you in sort of a day-to-day mode from the time that you started this part of your business before she was here and now with, being a mother in your day in and day out as well.
Yeah, it was a lot to get used to be honest. And I think that a lot of working moms feel the same way. You kind of have to get your rhythm going, and kids are very unpredictable. Usually she's sleeping right now. So you really have to be adaptable. I can't just go and work at a coffee shop whenever I want, which is what I did before. I really have to find ways to stay focused at home and to really, get as much work as I can into these short periods of time. And also, of course, working at night, which I didn't really do much before unless a client needed me to come at night. So it's just shifting your schedule and figuring it out. And I have childcare a couple days a week, so that helps too. But it's great. I still definitely want to work while being a mom, and I know not everyone wants that, but it's important to me to still have my career.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky to be able to do both.
Yeah, I think it's great. I do. And I'm sure that those transitions over time have become something that's just easier and easier. And I mean, some days maybe not as easy as others, but I think that's fantastic. And again, I think it speaks to your ability to continue to sort of, I use the word pivot, but just in your story, there's lots of places where there's been transitions from kind of professional to professional and personal, and finding a way to carve out what you find success is for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Which I think is a special part about working for yourself. And I know that's something that you had mentioned a little while ago, is that one of the things for you that you've enjoyed is the ability to work for yourself, right? And I recently read that there's sort of two types of, I don't want to say two types of people, but as we sort of think about from a career perspective, there's those that enjoy working for the CEO, and there's those who enjoy being the CEO. Mm-hmm. And the article that I read was that basically we're all sort of wired one way or another. It doesn't mean we can't do one or the other or learn to do one or the other, but that at the end of the day, we sort of just inherently know, which is who we are. And I know for me, having a career working for the CEO, there was a lot of reward and structure and stability out of that financially, but I always knew my inner voice said, you want to be the CEO, right? Yeah. And I've sort of always felt that with you too. And I think that's just so amazing that you've had this nice longevity of entrepreneurship, really, which is amazing.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, my last question for you is, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the fact that I've been able to be an entrepreneur for, oh my gosh, how long has it been? 7 years?
Yeah.
And I have really found self-motivation, because as you know, when you're your own boss, you really need to be self-motivated.
Yes.
Or else you could just sit around all day and drink coffee. So I'm proud of myself for finding that and for being able to do what I love doing.
I love that. That's great. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you,
as always,
for being guest number 2. And like I said, I just thank you again for having me in this beautiful space.
Thank you for coming.
Good job. Okay.